We've seen protests popping up all around the country, and the president, some say, has been inciting those protests, tweeting things like states should be liberated from stay-at-home orders. I saw over the weekend that there was also a protest in Annapolis, Maryland, Maryland's capital. Governor Inslee warned that Trump's language is fomenting domestic rebellion and could, in fact, lead to violence. Do you agree with Governor Inslee?
Well, I missed the small protest that they had here in Annapolis on Saturday because I was at BWI Airport welcoming the plane that had the 500,000 coronavirus test kits that flew in from Korea that's going to save thousands of people in our state. But it wasn't a very large protest. But I think it's unhelpful. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, the mixed messaging we're getting out of the president. For example, in our state, and I think in most of the states where he was encouraging protests, we don't have 14 days of downward numbers, which is what the president's plan that came out on Thursday night called for. The president's plan says that no state should consider reopening until you have 14 days of downward numbers. That made sense. But on Friday, he encouraged people to go out and protest and liberate those very same states. So he basically was encouraging people to violate his own federal policy. So I don't think it was helpful. I understand people's frustrations. I understand people want to get out of the house. They want to get back to work. I understand that they're hurting. That part I get. I'm frustrated. I feel like protesting myself, frankly. But I think to encourage people to go against your own policy and to just go out and I don't think it's helpful to the discussion.
This is Republican Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland speaking out in the midst of what has become yet another feud between a government official doing his job and a president desperate for someone to scapegoat for his own failings. In this instance, Hogan was forced, with the help of his wife Yumi, a Korean immigrant, to look to South Korea to purchase 500,000 test kits from suppliers there because of the massive shortfall of tests that we're experiencing in the United States. Hogan even went on to say, quote, "The number one problem facing us is lack of testing. We can't open up states without ramping up testing. It should not have been this difficult. The administration has made it clear over and over again that they want the states to take the lead, and we have to go out and do it ourselves, and that's exactly what we did." And so Trump took issue not only with the mild criticism, but also the fact that Hogan's doing this undermined Trump's baseless talking point that we have all the tests we could possibly hope for, which, to be clear, is decidedly untrue. I mean, think about this. Trump launched a feud with a governor in his own party, no less, because his efforts to get life-saving equipment that Trump was supposed to be in charge of getting showed that, in fact, Trump dropped the ball. He wasn't appreciative that the governor did his job or that Americans will be able to live because of it. He was pissed off because it undermined Trump's lie that he had everything taken care of. Because for the umpteenth time, Trump's not interested in helping Americans, he's interested in helping himself. Now, while Trump pretends that we're flush with tests, the truth is that we're not even close. We have been testing at a steady rate of roughly 150,000 people per day and have not increased that number, despite the fact that experts are maintaining that we need to be testing 500,000 to 700,000 people per day, more than 3 times at a minimum what we're currently doing. So when Trump claims that we have enough tests, he's lying to paint a rosy picture, because the reality of the situation, according to experts and not the guy who told us that the virus goes away with the warm weather, is that we'll need between 3 and 5 times as many tests as we currently have before it's safe to open the country. But the most important point that Hogan references is that with regard to lifting any stay-at-home orders, we should have 14 days of downward trending cases of the coronavirus. And that's not some arbitrary statistic. Those numbers came from Trump's own guidelines. In other words, the guy who's out there refusing to condemn protesters and slamming Democratic governors for committing the cardinal sin of keeping their constituents safe and fomenting civilian uprisings is the same person who plastered his name all over federal guidelines advocating for those restrictions to stay in place. So if you're wondering why people don't know what's going on in this country, it's because the president himself is giving contradictory information. The fact is, if we had a president with an ounce of foresight instead of an impulsive narcissist only out to prop up the stock market before November, he'd realized that encouraging his supporters to take to the streets is self-defeating. These people are protesting against measures literally put in place so that we can get back to work. It's these people who refuse to stay at home and therefore spread the virus who are prolonging the very stay-at-home orders that they themselves are protesting. So if they're upset that these measures are being put in place for such a long time, they have themselves to blame, since they're the ones who can't manage to stay at home long enough for us to actually flatten the curve. So whether it's because Trump doesn't care how many more people die so long as the economy can start picking up again and give him another talking point for his re-election, or if it's because he's just a chaos agent and thinks that inciting a culture war over this will help distract from his own failed response, the point is that what he's doing is dangerous. In reality, instead of picking fights or inciting protests or putting people's lives at risk, he should be busy coordinating a nationwide testing system. But it's beyond clear at this point that he won't. And so we're instead left relying on people like Larry Hogan and his wife to secure tests from 7,000 miles away. And frankly, it's a shame that such a glaring void of leadership from the White House has even made that necessary.